Welcome to part 7 of Learning to Learn at Home. In this episode, we're going to look at some powerful tools for self-directed learning. 3 tools in particular. First of all, thinking about what are the characteristics of an effective learner and going through that as an activity together with your child. Secondly, we're going to look at something called the 5 questions of self-managed learning or self-directed learning. And thirdly, we're going to think about obstacles and enablers, because we can often anticipate problems in advance of them happening, and we're just going to think about doing some planning to make sure that we're not completely thrown off course when those challenges inevitably arise. First of all, it's worth thinking about what do we really mean when we talk about self-directed learning. So there's a good quote here from a guy called Barry Zimmerman, who's a prolific writer and researcher of self-regulation. And he writes that self-regulated learners are proactive in their efforts to learn because they're aware of their strengths and limitations, and because they are guided by personally set goals and task-related strategies. These learners monitor their behavior in terms of their goals and self-reflect on their increasing effectiveness. This enhances their self-satisfaction and motivation to continue to improve their methods of learning. So this is what it looks like. This is what we're aiming towards, and it kind of sounds amazing, doesn't it? Where we achieve that virtuous cycle where children feel increasingly satisfied and motivated by their ability to learn things and to do so independently. So what's a really useful activity is to go through a process of working with your child to look at what do they think are the characteristics, firstly of an ineffective learner and then of an effective learner. And you might want to share that quote with them, or you might want to share it with them after they've had a go at coming up with their own list. So the characteristics of an ineffective learner, you typically see things like this. People don't set goals, they just sort of drift. They lack confidence, they don't communicate very well, they procrastinate, they make excuses, they don't finish things. They might say that, oh, I've got a really bad memory. They get easily distracted, and they're terrified of failure, as we've talked about in previous videos. And then we think, okay, so if they're the characteristics of an ineffective learner, what are the characteristics of an effective learner? And in many cases, it's just the reverse. So they set clear goals, they're confident, they are self-starters, they're organized, they're versatile, flexible, they can do many things, they're determined, they see things through, they have a good memory, they manage distractions, they embrace failure. Some of these things some people think are really fixed, especially the poor memory and good memory thing. But you can really improve your memory. Anybody can really improve their memory. We'll look at this when we come on to project-based learning. And so we can get better at all of these things. We can get good at setting goals. We can learn how to communicate. We can get more organized. And so when you do this activity, it's important to make clear that this is all really doable, that we just need to practice and move ourselves towards each of these goals. The second activity is one that I came across at a school that I used to work at, or kind of an unschool if you like. It's a place called the Self-Managed Learning College, where the children can do what they want, when they want, for how long. They can choose not to do stuff if they prefer. It's an incredible place. It's really fascinating. It's not completely without structure. We start each day with a learning group where we look at what happened the day before and what the plans are for the day. And then once a term or so, the children would work through these 5 questions. And they're very simple in some sense. Where have you been? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? How will you get there? And how will you know when you've got there? But these are really powerful questions. You can apply them to your whole life if you want, but you'd be there a long time. Where have you been? How long have you got? Or you can apply them to any particular area of your life, like friendships, or your schoolwork, or how sorted your house is, or finances, or relationships, or whatever. And it's important to start with that first question about where have you been, so that rather than just starting with what needs to be done now and thinking about the to-do list, looking back at where we've been and the journey that we've already been on and seeing what needs to happen next as a continuation of that journey. Where are you now and where do you want to be? Those are quite similar questions to the thing that we looked at in mapping the journey. And then how will you get there? At the Self-Managed Learning College, that would become the curriculum, if you like. That's what the child would do in order to get from A to B. Children sometimes struggle with that 5th question, how will you know when you've got there? Because if they haven't achieved success, if they haven't seen what success looks like, then it's hard for them to do that. So don't get too worried if they find it difficult to answer that question. I've used these questions on myself many times, and I worked through these questions with my son recently. It took us a few weeks to do so because it's really quite an in-depth process, but I heartily recommend it. It really helps them to see the journey that they've been on, where this journey is going, and how they're going to get there. And lastly, in a way, it's zooming into that question 4, how will you get there? It's worth thinking about obstacles and enablers, where you just think, what are the problems that we're likely to encounter getting from where we are now to where we want to be? Is there a lack of time? Is there a lack of technology? Is there a lack of money or resources? And then thinking about the enablers, what can we do that are going to help us along the way? And how can we anticipate those obstacles in advance? Because when you do that, you can start planning for how to make the two sides of this diagram link up so that the enablers will enable us to overcome those obstacles. Pretty simple idea, but it's well worth doing. So that's it. 3 powerful tools for self-directed learning. Thinking about the characteristics of an effective learner, working your way through those 5 questions, either applying them to your whole life or just to one area of your life, and thinking about obstacles in advance and how to overcome them. Thank you very much. Please do let us know how you get on, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Until next time, take care.